We met on a Tuesday night. Funny how something that changes your life forever starts on such an ordinary day. I was 25, fresh off a cross-country move for a job I wasn't even sure I wanted. The city felt too big, too fast. I didn't know anyone. The apartment I'd rented was a box with paper-thin walls and creaky pipes, and that night, I just needed to get out of it for a bit. I walked without any direction and ended up at this little bar tucked between a laundromat and a tattoo parlor. Inside, it was dim but warm, the kind of place with mismatched stools and a jukebox that still took coins. And there she was, Lisa. She was tending bar in a faded band t-shirt and jeans, her hair pulled into a low, messy bun, smile wide and effortless. She wasn't trying to catch anyone's eye, she just did. I sat at the bar and ordered a whiskey. She poured it without asking a single follow-up, but there was this look, like she was trying to figure me out. I wasn't great at small talk, still not, but she had this way of drawing people out without even trying. Before I knew it, we were talking about music, books, bad dates, how people come to cities looking for themselves and sometimes find other people instead. I went back the next week, and the one after that. She started sliding a beer across the bar as soon as I walked in, no questions. I started lingering a little longer each time. We weren't in a rush. I think that's what made it different. We just kept showing up, until it stopped being a choice and became second nature. Lisa moved in with me 9 months later. The apartment was still small, but it felt fuller with her in it. She brought art into the space, real art, not the mass-printed stuff I'd slapped on the walls to keep them from looking bare. She brought color, music, scent. Suddenly the kitchen smelled like fresh basil, sandalwood candles, her lavender shampoo. We got a dog from the shelter, a goofy mutt named Pepper who adored her and barely tolerated me. And a year after that, we got married. Nothing huge. Just a backyard ceremony with our families and a few close friends. She wore a simple dress, barefoot in the grass. I swear I've never seen anyone look more alive. We settled into life without trying to chase anything big. I took a steady job in IT with a small firm and worked my way up over the years. She stopped bartending shortly after we got married and opened a ceramic studio out of our garage. At first it was just a hobby, a way to unwind, but people started asking to buy her pieces. Bowls, mugs, vases. Somehow, she turned it into a little business. Local markets, online orders, even a couple of shops that carried her work. She'd lose track of time in there, hands covered in clay, music playing loud enough to shake the floor. I loved seeing her like that, immersed, joyful, completely herself. Our days were simple. Coffee in the morning together, even if I was running late. Weekend hikes with Pepper. Pizza nights. Silent dinners where the quiet wasn't heavy, just easy. It wasn't perfect all the time, but it was ours. We both liked being homebodies, and we liked being home with each other. It wasn't just love, it was comfort, it was rhythm, it was 1,000 shared habits that stitched our lives together. If you told me back then that I was living the best years of my life, I might have laughed and said something self-deprecating. But I think part of me knew it. I just didn't say it out loud. It's strange how quickly you start to refer to things as ours. Our house, our dog, our weekends. You stop thinking in terms of I, and start building your life around the idea of we. That shift felt seamless with Lisa. From the beginning, we were partners. Not just in the romantic sense, but in the everyday, real-life kind of way. The kind where someone folds your laundry without you asking, remembers how you take your coffee, and knows when you need space without needing it explained. Our life together wasn't some whirlwind or fairy tale, it was steady. And I loved that. About 2 years after we got married, we bought our first home. It was a 2-story just outside of town, nothing extravagant, but it had character. A sunroom that Lisa immediately claimed for her plants and sketchbooks, hardwood floors that creaked in just the right way, and a porch swing that became our favorite place to drink wine on cool nights. I still remember the first time we walked through the house. Lisa touched the kitchen counter with both hands, looked up at me, and said, "This feels like ours already." And it did. We signed the paperwork the next week. Life moved in a quiet rhythm. I kept climbing the ladder at work, not fast, but steady, and Lisa's studio picked up more traction than we expected. She had a knack for connecting with people, not just selling to them. Customers became regulars. Regulars became friends. Sometimes I'd come home to find someone in the kitchen having tea with her, a stranger to me, but apparently someone she'd known for months. That was her way. People trusted her, and she always had time for them. We traveled a little, mostly road trips. Lisa wasn't a big fan of flying, And we liked the kind of vacations where you could stop whenever something caught your eye. We drove the Blue Ridge Parkway in the fall, watched the leaves change like someone flipped a switch on the trees. We spent a week in Maine one summer, eating our weight in seafood and walking barefoot along the coast. We made memories, sure, but more than anything, we just made a life together. One that felt rooted. Weekends were slow and familiar. Mornings started late. I'd make breakfast, usually eggs and toast, sometimes pancakes if I was feeling ambitious. Lisa would read the paper or something from her never-ending stack of novels. Pepper would beg for scraps and then fall asleep with his head on her feet. Some Sundays we didn't even leave the house, and I never once felt bored. I think that's how I knew we were solid. We didn't need to be entertained. We just enjoyed each other's presence. When friends asked us when we were going to have kids, we'd smile and say someday. We weren't in a rush. We wanted to enjoy each other, and we did. I think we both liked the space we had, not just physically, but emotionally. There was room to breathe. No pressure, no timelines. Just two people doing life side by side. I never questioned any of it. If there was a moment I thought twice, I can't remember it now. We had a good home, a good dog, good work, and each other. And for a long time, that was more than enough. Our daughter came into our lives on an ordinary Thursday morning in May. The sky was overcast, and Lisa had barely slept the night before. I'd packed and repacked the hospital bag twice, trying to stay calm, trying to keep myself busy. But when it was time, everything went quiet in my head. I remember driving her to the hospital with both hands clutched on the steering wheel like I was guiding a plane in for landing. Lisa was mostly silent in the seat beside me, her hand on her belly, breathing slow and deep. She was always calmer than me in the moments that mattered. Her labor wasn't easy. It was long, harder than we expected. But when our daughter finally arrived, crying and pink and squirming in the nurse's arms, it was like the world cracked open and let the light in. I held her just minutes after Lisa did, and I swear to God, nothing in my life has ever come close to that feeling. Holding this tiny person we made, seeing myself in her face, seeing Lisa's eyes, everything I thought I knew about love just expanded in that instant. We named her Emily. From the moment we brought her home, everything changed. The quiet life we'd grown so comfortable with became a beautiful kind of chaos. Bottles, diapers, night feedings, lullabies. The dog took a while to adjust. He was deeply offended at first, but even Pepper came around, curling up beside her crib like he was on guard duty. We were exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely in love. Lisa took to motherhood with the same focus she brought to everything else. She read the books, joined the groups, asked questions, tried to do it all right. I wasn't always as smooth. I fumbled things, burned bottles, once put the diaper on backward. But I tried. I really did. I wanted to be the kind of father she could count on. The kind who showed up. Our days became structured around Emily's rhythms. Mornings were bottles and baby wipes. Afternoons were stroller walks through the neighborhood or folding laundry in the living room with cartoons on in the background. Evenings were soft lullabies and Lisa whispering to her like every word mattered. I used to sit in the hallway outside her room just to listen to them. The two of them. That's when I really started to understand the word home. It wasn't a house or a place. It was the people inside it. The two of them. My girls. As Emily got older, everything just kept unfolding in new layers of joy. Her first laugh. Her first steps across the living room floor, wobbly, arms outstretched like she was flying. Her first word, which wasn't dada, much to my dismay, but light. Still, I was obsessed. I'd come home from work and pick her up before I even took off my shoes. I'd sing to her, tell her stories, let her fall asleep on my chest. Those moments were everything to me. I loved Lisa deeply, but there was something about being Emily's dad that brought out a part of me I didn't even know I had. I felt gentler, softer, like I finally understood what it meant to put someone else first, without question. Lisa and I made a good team. At least, that's how it felt. We'd take turns during the night when Emily was teething. We coordinated pickups, shared calendars, figured out how to keep our lives moving around the orbit of this small, incredible human. There were days we were both fried, stretched too thin, snapping over small things. But we always came back to each other. Always. Emily is 7 now. Sharp, curious, with her mother's confidence and a hint of my stubbornness. She draws constantly. On paper, on walls, on herself. She makes me laugh every single day. When I look at her, there's this ache in my chest that's equal parts love and awe. She calls me her hero. And even if I don't always feel like I deserve it, I'd do anything to live up to that. For a long time, I thought I had everything I'd ever wanted. A wife I loved. A daughter who lit up my world. A life that, while not flashy, felt whole. And I still remember those years as the best of my life. It started small. So small I almost didn't notice it. Lisa had always been independent. That was one of the things I loved about her. She didn't need to be the center of attention, but she had her own world, her own orbit. She was sharp, creative, and rarely idle. She liked her space, and I respected that. But sometime in the last year, her patterns began to shift in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. She started leaving the house more often. Errands that used to take an hour started taking 2. She'd go out for supplies for the studio, then come home with nothing but a bag of takeout and a vague excuse about traffic or getting caught up talking to someone. She got quieter, too. Not cold exactly, but distant. Distracted. I'd ask how her day went, and she'd say fine, before retreating into her phone or upstairs to rest. I started spending more evenings with Emily, just the two of us, while Lisa said she needed to recharge or had some pieces to finish. At first, I chalked it up to burnout. Running her own business, raising a kid, keeping a house, it was a lot. Maybe she just needed space. I didn't want to crowd her. I figured, this is just a phase. Every couple has them. But then I noticed she changed her phone password. We used to be open about that stuff. Not in a monitor each other kind of way, just out of convenience. We used to grab each other's phones to play music, check delivery updates, answer quick texts. No big deal. So when she suddenly set a passcode and tilted her screen away while typing it, it registered. Quietly, like a pebble dropped in water. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy. But the questions kept coming. They showed up in my head at night when I couldn't sleep. They lingered at the back of my mind when I watched her laugh at something on her phone and then quickly turn it face down when I walked into the room. She started wearing perfume around the house more often, at odd hours. Like when she said she was just going to the store. And she started going to the gym again, which I encouraged, but she never invited me to join her. And she always went at the same time every evening, like clockwork. A routine she suddenly cared about very deeply. One night, I casually asked if she wanted to go out, just the two of us. A movie, dinner, anything. Emily could stay with her grandparents. She hesitated, said she was exhausted, that she had too much on her plate, and that we'd go another time. I nodded, tried to believe it, but something in her tone, it didn't feel tired. It felt guarded. The biggest shift, though, was in the way she touched me, or didn't. For years, Lisa had always been affectionate. A hand on my shoulder when she passed behind me in the kitchen, her feet brushing mine in bed. A quick kiss on the cheek while I was doing the dishes. It wasn't constant, but it was always there, like a language we shared. Now, weeks would go by without a single gesture. When I reached for her, she'd smile, distracted, and pull away gently. Always gently. Always with some excuse. It all could have been explained. That's what I kept telling myself. I tried to be rational. We were getting older. We had responsibilities. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe I was imagining things. But the thing about long relationships is that they live in the small stuff. And when the small stuff changes, your gut notices long before your brain is willing to admit anything's wrong. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just watched. And I waited. And quietly, in a part of me I wasn't ready to face, I started to feel afraid. It's strange, the things you keep doing even when something inside you is quietly unraveling. I still made her coffee every morning. Still kissed her cheek before leaving for work, even when she barely looked up from her phone. I still sent her funny links during the day, still texted her to ask how her morning was going, even when I knew the answer would be one-worded, delayed, or forgotten altogether. I didn't want to believe what my instincts were whispering, so I just kept going through the motions. If I stayed the course, maybe everything would settle back into place. That's what I told myself. But the truth is, I wasn't just going through the motions. I was still trying. Desperately trying. For her. For Emily. For the life I thought we were still building. And part of that meant continuing to show up as a provider, as a father, as the man they both could count on. Emily had just started private school that year, something Lisa and I had talked about for months before agreeing to it. The tuition wasn't cheap, and even with both of us bringing in income, mine from the IT firm, hers from the studio, it meant cutting back in other areas. But I didn't hesitate. I wanted Emily to have every opportunity. She was already ahead in reading, curious about everything, asking questions most kids her age hadn't even thought to form yet. She'd come home from school bursting with stories about her day, her classmates, her teachers. Seeing her excited made it all feel worth it. I took on extra hours at work to cover the increase in tuition without dipping into savings. I didn't tell Lisa that part. I just did it. I figured that was what being a dad meant. You carry the weight so your kid doesn't have to. Some nights I came home so exhausted I barely got through dinner before dozing off on the couch. But I'd still get up early the next morning to make sure Emily's lunch was packed with the little handwritten notes she liked me to sneak in. Go get Em, champ. You're smarter than you know. Love you forever. And for Lisa, despite how distant she'd become, I kept showing my love the only way I knew how. Through action. Gifts, small surprises, reminders that I was still here, still thinking about her, even if she seemed far away. On a random Tuesday, I sent flowers to her studio, just because. On her birthday, I gave her a new piece of pottery equipment she'd mentioned in passing 6 months before. She was surprised I remembered. Her face lit up for a second. Then it faded, like something distracted her mid-thought. She said thank you, gave me a quick hug, and went back to scrolling her phone. For our anniversary, I planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Emily would stay with her grandparents. I booked a quiet cabin by a lake, the same one we used to visit before she was born. I imagined us sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, reconnecting like we used to. But Lisa said she couldn't get away from the studio that weekend. Too many orders. Too many deadlines. I didn't argue. I canceled the reservation and told her maybe next month. But we both knew we wouldn't reschedule. It hurt, but I didn't let myself spiral. I told myself, this is what love looks like sometimes. You show up, even when it's not returned the way you hope. You stay, even when it's lonely. Because that's what commitment is. Not just the good times, but the hard ones too. I wasn't ready to give up on her. I wasn't ready to give up on us. And so I kept giving. My time, my energy, my money, my heart. I kept investing in a future I still believed was possible. I just didn't know that I was the only one still investing. It was a Sunday afternoon. I remember because I had just come in from mowing the lawn. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees, and Emily was inside watching a cartoon, half asleep on the couch. Lisa had been quiet all day, which wasn't new. I figured she was tired or annoyed about something she hadn't told me, which had become normal enough that I didn't press it anymore. I washed my hands, took a drink from the kitchen faucet, and heard her call my name from the living room. Her tone was flat. No edge, no affection. Just my name. When I walked in, she was already sitting on the edge of the armchair, elbows on her knees, like she'd rehearsed this. Emily was next to her, awake now, legs crossed, looking at me with this strange kind of excitement that didn't match the weight in the room. I stood there, wiping my hands on a dish towel, and I knew, before she said anything. I felt it in my stomach, like something inside me was bracing for impact. I need to tell you something, Lisa said. Her eyes were dry, her voice steady. I've been seeing someone. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at her. I was holding the towel like it was the only thing keeping me standing. I didn't plan for it to happen, she continued. It started a while ago. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I still hadn't said a word. My throat was dry. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear her. All I could do was look at her face, the same face I used to wake up next to every morning. The same face I kissed goodnight for almost a decade. And now it was a stranger's face. Cold. Detached. Done. Then came the second hit. She said they were moving in together. We're leaving tonight, she added, like it was some mundane piece of scheduling. His place is ready. We've been planning this. Emily stood up at that point. She looked at me with this kind of giddy smile that made my insides twist. He's really nice, Dad, she said. He's way cooler than you. He has a pool. I still hadn't said anything. I couldn't. It was like my brain had detached from my body. My daughter, my little girl, the light of my life, was looking at me like I'd just been replaced. Not like she was sad. Not even conflicted. Just excited. Excited to leave. Lisa stood too, smoothing her jeans with her palms. We'll come by next week to pick up the rest of our things. I've already talked to a lawyer. He'll be reaching out to you. I finally found my voice, but it was small. Hoarse. You're taking her away from me? She wants to come, Lisa said. It's not about punishment. It's just what's best for all of us. I looked at Emily again. She didn't look angry. Just eager. Like this was an upgrade. Like I was the obsolete version of her life. They didn't stay much longer. Lisa said something about giving me space. She packed 2 bags and helped Emily into the car. I stood in the doorway, not following them out, not stopping them, not doing anything at all. I didn't even know what to do. I watched my wife and my daughter, my whole world, drive away like they were just running errands. No tears. No second thoughts. Just gone. I closed the door behind me and leaned my head against it, the silence inside the house swallowing everything. I don't remember how long I stood there. I just know when I finally sat down, the cushion beside me still smelled like Emily's shampoo. And that's when it hit me. They were never coming back. The first night alone was unbearable. I kept the lights on, not because I was scared, but because I couldn't stand the way the darkness wrapped around the empty spaces they left behind. The silence was different now. It wasn't the peaceful kind we used to share after Emily went to bed, when Lisa would lean against me on the couch and we'd watch something without saying much. This silence was aggressive. It pressed in from the walls. It echoed. It made me feel like I was losing my mind. I tried sitting on the couch like normal. I even turned on one of Emily's shows, some cartoon she used to watch with her legs tucked under mine, but the theme song alone cracked something open in my chest. I had to turn it off before it finished. I ended up sleeping on the floor of the guest room. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't bear to lie in the bed we once shared. Her imprint might still be there. The smell of her hair. The ghost of what I thought was love. I didn't cry at first. Not really. I was too numb. I walked through the house like it was a museum of someone else's life. Their toothbrushes were gone. Emily's art was missing from the fridge. Lisa had even taken her favorite mug from the kitchen, the one I got her for our 5th anniversary. It had a tiny crack in the handle, and I kept offering to replace it. She always told me no, that it was hers. Of course she took it. Of course she left mine behind. I spent hours just standing still, looking at rooms I no longer recognized. I would catch myself reaching for my phone to text Lisa something, some joke, some errand, something I would have shared with her out of habit, and then I'd remember she wasn't mine anymore. She was someone else's, and she had taken my daughter with her. That part broke me in a way I didn't know was possible. Emily. I didn't even get a real goodbye. No hug. No hesitation. Just that bright, stupid smile. He's way cooler than you. That sentence played in my head on repeat for days. I knew she was a kid. I knew she didn't mean it the way it landed, but it still felt like she'd stabbed a hole straight through my chest and walked away holding the blade. I tried to call. Once. The next evening. Just to ask how Emily was doing. Lisa didn't answer. She texted instead, "She's fine. We'll be in touch through the lawyer from now on." That was it. The realization that I had no control anymore, no voice in any of it, hollowed me out. For years, I built a life around protecting and providing for them. Everything I did, every hour I worked, every holiday I planned, every dollar I earned, was for that house, for their futures, for the safety of us. And now I was just a name on a contact list. A line item on a legal form. A man in a house that no longer felt like a home. I stopped eating. Not intentionally. I just forgot. Food lost its taste. Music became unbearable. I sat on the porch one afternoon, where Lisa and I used to share wine and talk about nothing, and I caught myself whispering her name out loud. Like saying it might summon her. Like I could rewind something if I just wished hard enough. But wishes are for people who still believe in magic. And I just watched mine walk out the front door without even flinching. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. Right then, I was just broken. I didn't know who I was without them. It started with the front doorbell. I almost didn't answer it. I hadn't answered much of anything for weeks. Calls from friends, messages from Lisa's attorney, even the occasional neighbor checking in. The outside world had become a blur. But that afternoon, something in me stirred just enough to walk to the door and open it. It was Claire. She was the woman who ran the small cafe down the street. We'd spoken a handful of times, small talk, pleasantries, the occasional friendly exchange when I stopped in for coffee after dropping Emily off at school. She lived 3 blocks away and had always been kind in that easy, unforced way. But I hadn't seen her since everything fell apart. She stood there holding a covered dish. Something that smelled like actual food, warm and real. "You've looked like a ghost walking around lately," she said, half smiling. "I figured you hadn't cooked for yourself in a while." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't expected kindness, not from someone who barely knew me. She stepped inside without me inviting her, like she could sense I wouldn't stop her. "You don't have to talk," she said gently, setting the dish on the counter. "Just eat this when you can. It's nothing fancy. Chicken and rice. Something solid." Then she left. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, staring at the container. I heated it up later that night and sat at the kitchen table, eating slowly, like the act itself was unfamiliar. It was the first real meal I'd had since Lisa and Emily left. And for some reason, when I finished, I cried. Not because of the food, not really, but because someone had seen me, really seen me, and didn't look away. Claire came by again a few days later, this time with coffee and no explanation. We sat on the porch and didn't say much. She didn't ask about what happened. She didn't need to. I think she just understood that I needed to be around someone who didn't flinch at my grief. She had this calm to her, this stillness that made it feel like the walls weren't pressing in so hard when she was near. Eventually, I started walking to her cafe in the mornings again. She'd wave me behind the counter and hand me a coffee without asking for my order. We'd talk sometimes about nothing important, music, weather, her weird old cat that hated everyone but her. It was easy, uncomplicated, and for the first time in months, I stopped dreading the mornings. There was one evening, late in the fall, when she came over with a bottle of wine and sat with me on the porch swing. We didn't touch. We didn't even sit close. But it was the first time the silence didn't feel heavy. I caught myself laughing at something she said, really laughing, and I remember stopping mid-laugh, like I'd broken some rule, like I wasn't allowed to feel that yet. She noticed, and she said the one thing that has stuck with me more than anything else. "You're allowed to heal," she said. "You don't owe your pain to anyone." I don't know what we were, or what we were becoming. But Claire didn't try to fix me. She didn't ask me to explain anything. She just showed up, again and again, until I realized I wasn't completely alone anymore. And slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice it at first, the weight started to lift. It had been 6 months. Half a year since they left. Half a year since that Sunday evening when Lisa sat me down like she was breaking news to a coworker, not to the man who once held her hair back while she threw up from morning sickness, or the man who folded tiny pink socks with shaking hands before Emily was born. 6 months of silence. Not a word from Lisa beyond what the lawyers required. No birthday call from Emily. No updates, no pictures, nothing. Just a clean, intentional break. It took me a long time to accept that. Even longer to stop waiting for a knock at the door. And then, the day I finally stopped looking over my shoulder, the knock came. It was a Saturday morning. I'd just finished fixing the cabinet door in the kitchen that had been hanging off one hinge for months. Claire was in the living room, humming along to some old jazz record, barefoot, holding a mug of tea. She belonged here now, not just in the physical sense, but in the quiet details. Her coat on the hook, her slippers by the couch, her smile, easy and familiar, like it had always been part of the house. And then the knock. I opened the door and saw them, Lisa and Emily, standing on the porch like ghosts. Lisa looked thinner, like life had worn her down. Her makeup was uneven. Her eyes were puffy. She opened her mouth to speak, but faltered. Emily stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure this was the right house. I didn't say anything. I just stared at them. Lisa spoke first. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. Behind me, Claire stepped into view, still holding her mug, still humming. She looked between us and then gently said, "I'll give you some space," before disappearing into the kitchen. I could feel Lisa stiffen the moment she saw her. Her eyes flicked over my shoulder, taking in the detail she wasn't ready for. The detail that said this house doesn't belong to you anymore. Emily looked at me, then past me, then back again. "Is she your girlfriend?" she asked, her voice smaller than I remembered. I still hadn't spoken. I think I wanted them to feel the silence for once. Lisa cleared her throat. "He left us," she said quickly. "We had to move out of his place. It didn't work out. I made a mistake." A mistake. That's what she called 6 months of silence. A mistake. Like she'd picked the wrong movie or taken the wrong exit on the highway. Like what she did hadn't shattered everything I built for over a decade. "We'd like to come home," she said. "We've been thinking about things. Emily misses you. Don't you, honey?" Emily hesitated, then gave a practiced little nod. I could see it wasn't genuine. It was something rehearsed in the car on the way over. Something Lisa told her to say. And even then, she looked confused. Like she wasn't sure if she missed me or just missed the comfort of something familiar. I finally spoke. "I don't think you understand," I said. My voice was quiet. Steady. "This isn't your home anymore." Lisa's face twitched, somewhere between anger and disbelief. She took a step forward. "Come on, don't be like this. I made a bad call. I thought it was what I wanted, but it wasn't. Emily needs her father. She had one, I said. She still does. Emily's lip quivered a little. Not from sadness. From uncertainty. She didn't recognize the man in front of her. I didn't either, if I'm honest. I was different now. I'd spent months broken, rebuilding myself from the foundation up. And I'd learned, brick by brick, that some things aren't worth salvaging. Lisa looked past me again. I saw her eyes settle on the photos now hanging in the hallway. Claire and I at the beach. Claire and I in the kitchen. Claire and I laughing over burnt cookies and shared playlists. Her face drained of color. I think you should go, I said, finally stepping back to close the door. She didn't move. Wait. Please. Just think about it. We've been through too much. You're right, I said, one hand on the door. We have. And I've finally gotten through it. The door closed with a soft click. No slamming. No yelling. Just the sound of something ending. Something that should have ended a long time ago. Claire came out a minute later and touched my arm. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt okay. I didn't recognize them at first. It had only been 6 months, but grief and regret were people down in ways time alone never could. I was coming out of the garage when I saw a car pull into the driveway. For a moment, I thought it was a delivery. Claire had mentioned ordering something for the front porch. But then the doors opened. 2 figures stepped out slowly. A woman. A girl. Both unfamiliar at first glance. The woman was hunched at the shoulders, thinner than I remembered, her skin paler, her hair pulled back without effort. The girl, taller now, awkward in a way kids get when they grow too fast, stood beside her, arms folded, like she wasn't sure she even wanted to be there. It wasn't until I stepped closer that I realized who they were. Lisa. And Emily. They froze when they saw me. Lisa blinked a few times, like she had to make sure I was real. Emily squinted at me like she was trying to match the face in her memory with the man standing in front of her. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't need to. The look on Lisa's face told me everything. This wasn't confidence or hope. It was desperation. I know how it looks, she started, taking a step forward. I know you probably hate me, but we didn't know where else to go. I kept my hands in my pockets. Calm. Still. You didn't recognize my number when I called last week? I asked. She looked down. I was ashamed. Emily stood silently beside her, eyes flicking to the house, then back to me. Her expression wasn't joyful. It wasn't even sad. It was confusion. Hesitation. Like she'd walked into a story she no longer understood. Claire opened the front door just then. She was in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair messy, holding a dish towel in one hand. She paused when she saw them, then stepped behind me wordlessly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Lisa's eyes widened when she saw her. Not with anger, something worse. Realization. You moved on, she said. Not accusing. Just stunned. Already. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt distance. She wasn't mine anymore. That became obvious the moment she left. What surprised me was how completely I'd accepted it. No, I said. I healed. That's different. Lisa's lips parted, like she had something else to say. But nothing came out. She looked at Emily, who was shifting uncomfortably now, her arms still crossed. For a moment, Lisa's gaze turned to pleading. I made a mistake, she said softly. A huge one. I thought what I wanted was freedom. I thought I needed something new. But I was wrong. I see that now. I miss you. We both do. I turned to Emily. Is that true? She hesitated. Her mouth opened, then closed again. And in that silence, I knew. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of her life that had structure. Familiarity. Someone to take care of things when her mom couldn't. Lisa reached for my hand. I stepped back. I gave everything I had to this family, I said. My voice didn't shake. And when I needed you to fight for us, even just to hesitate, you didn't. You handed our life over to someone else like it was a bad meal you could send back. I thought he was better, she whispered. I nodded. You made that choice. Now live with it. Claire placed a hand gently on my arm again. Lisa glanced at her, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Envy, maybe, or regret. But the truth was, the person she wanted back didn't exist anymore. I turned toward the door. You should go, I said. Please don't come back. Lisa opened her mouth again, but the door closed before she could speak. Inside, Claire didn't say a word. She just stood with me in the hallway, her fingers laced through mine. And somewhere deep inside, something settled. Not with joy, not with triumph, just peace. I stood in the hallway for a long time after the door closed. Not because I was shaken, but because I wasn't. I expected something more from that moment. Some collapse inside me. A flood of old memories rushing back. The sound of Lisa crying. Emily calling out for me. Something. Anything. But it was just quiet. And for once, the silence didn't hurt. Claire moved through the house like she always did. Unbothered, respectful, steady. She didn't pepper me with questions. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just made tea. That's what I needed. Someone who let me come back to myself in my own time. Someone who didn't need my story to center their reaction. Later that night, after the porch lights were off and the house was still, I sat in bed thinking about how I used to lie awake wondering what I did wrong. I used to replay every moment, every missed sign, every night I didn't ask the right question or pay enough attention. I used to think maybe if I had worked fewer hours, bought her more gifts, complimented her more often, maybe she would have stayed. But I don't believe that anymore. I know now it wasn't about what I lacked. It was about what she needed to feel about herself, about what she thought she deserved. People don't always cheat because they're unhappy with you. Sometimes, they do it because they're unhappy with themselves, and they expect someone new to fix that. That's a battle I never stood a chance of winning. The hardest thing wasn't forgiving her. It was forgiving myself. For not seeing it. For not protecting Emily from the fallout. For not being enough. But somewhere between the long walks, the late-night talks with Claire, and the quiet mornings where I stopped waking up expecting pain, I started to realize I was enough. I always had been. I'm not bitter. Not anymore. That surprises me, even now. There was a time when I wanted her to suffer. I wanted her to feel the loneliness she handed me like a death sentence. But what I've learned is this: revenge is a weight. It keeps you tied to the past. And I was done being tethered to a version of my life that no longer existed. I donated most of Lisa's things last week. The rest, I boxed up and put in the attic, not because I wanted to hold on to them, but because Emily might want them someday, when she's old enough to understand that people are flawed and life doesn't come with a script. I don't know if we'll ever have a real relationship again. That's her choice now. I'll always be her father, but I'm no longer trying to be a placeholder in someone else's idea of family. Claire's asleep next to me now, one arm flung across my chest like she always does. She's not a replacement. She's not a fix. She's just someone who walked in when I was shattered and sat with me quietly while I learned how to put myself back together. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Lisa had stayed. If she never cheated. If we kept going like nothing was wrong. But I think I would have lived a smaller life. Because it's only when everything fell apart that I realized I had to become something new. Something stronger. Not harder. Just more honest. I don't live in the past anymore. I don't wait for apologies. I don't ask why. I just live. And that's more than I ever thought I'd be able to say.